Alrighty, this is Unit 4, Absolutism Notes with Miss Duncan. Just a bit of a heads up. This section's really kind of long. We're going to split it into two different types, Western Absolutism versus Eastern Absolutism. So just hold on to your hats because there'll be two separate sections and all of it will be absolutism. We're going to break it up a little bit. Here is your first content check, so please press pause, take a look, see what the questions are, so you can keep your eyes open for them. I didn't get them in on your handout notes this time, so you don't have them in front of you necessarily as you're going along. Alrighty, with absolutism, we kind of talked about this a little bit in class, but basically, with all the wars of religion, excuse me, the wars of religion, the things that are going on, we've got a big shakeup in the political atmosphere, the political stage, if you will. And so, excuse me, we're going to see a lot of these rulers who are going to go from the old style. They're firmly moving into more nationalism, more central control, more parliamentary governments. And of course, that also means that the kings are going to need to pay for all that kind of stuff. We talked about bureaucracy, keeping a standing army, and making sure that they can pay for that army by taxing the peasants. So I have talked about this a little bit in class before, but just to make sure everybody's got it, most of these sovereigns are going to feel that they're ordained by God to be there. This is called the divine right of kings. It is a major vocabulary term in this unit. It's basically what justifies their rule of absolutism. God put me on earth. Whatever I think, say, feel, or do has the stamp, the seal of approval of God. So I need to rule, not you. I am basically God's vessel on earth. So they're really supplanting the Pope at this point, and the whole divine right of kings. And this is the slide that we saw in class. So hopefully this all kind of sparks a little bit of a familiar tone for you, because all that stuff we talked about. I also did note, and this is in addition to what you saw under the war category, in times of war, societies tend to give great power to their political leaders. Even if you look at our times after 9/11, when the country kind of came together and was very united against terrorism, some of the laws that were enacted, like the Patriot Act, that's still in power today, it is quite a big deal that there is a level of crime that if you commit this type of crime, all of your other rights that normally you would get, habeas corpus, right to trial, right to jury, right to speedy and immediate court, right to representation, blah, 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 all of those rights, that these are suspended because of the type of crime. And we have done that here in the United States. It's called the Patriot Act. So don't have time period snobbery is the moral of this story, that during times of war we tend to give lots of power to our rulers, whether that be a king or a president or Congress or whatever, because we tend to weigh the value of our safety against what's really going on and the value of our natural rights. So in this time, when we start to see all these absolute rulers doing this, just kind of keep in mind that it's really kind of a symbol of the times that's going on in Europe at this point. So growing bureaucracy, make sure you know what that is. Mercenary armies, the need to tax, all of this stuff has, again, should be a bit of a refresher for you. But that need to tax, because of the price revolution, things being so high, do yourself a favor and take just a second to make sure that you look up in some of our past review book material what the price revolution is. The first place I would go to is the absolutism handout I gave you from the review book. I would go straight there and just kind of make sure that you know what the price revolution is. Totalitarianism versus absolutism. Take a second. Make sure you write all this out. There should be like a big, huge space for you to write the whole thing out, so you're going to need to stop this anyway. But take a look before you press play again and we talk about it, so that you have kind of an idea of what I'm about to say, and that way you can kind of double check and make sure that you've got the right idea. Press pause now. So, totalitarianism is something that we're definitely going to be talking about, particularly a whole lot more when we get into dictatorships and things like that after World War I, World War II, Cold War, etc., and we start talking about some other, again, dictator-like figures. Absolutism is the title of our unit this unit, so we need to take a second and just stop and say, okay, are we talking about totalitarianism? Kinda, sorta, yes. Absolutism, historiographical, big word there, but basically, historians have named this time period absolutism. After the fact, this wasn't like the kings went around saying, I'm an absolutism king. No, not exactly. But it's used to form, or it's used to describe this form of monarchical power. It's unrestrained by any other institutions. So there's a lack of restraint. The church doesn't put a restriction, the legislatures don't, even their social elites, so the major institutions that normally would. Okay? They put no outside pressure on the monarch to do what they're supposed to do. Totalitarianism, first of all, is a political system. Okay? So it's an actual system. It's not just a term used to describe something. Where the state has no limits to its authority, so that's very similar. And it strives to regulate every aspect of public and private life wherever it can get away with it. So one is an actual political system, the other is a term that we describe about a time period after the fact. So we're going to start off talking about France, and we've talked about Henry III. We've talked about Henry of Navarre and how these boy kings, the War of the Three Henrys. We've talked about all of that, so I'm not going to rehash it. You got the Edict of Nantes, you got the Bourbon family line, but I did say keep kind of in your the background knowledge there that the next guy is going to be Louis XIII. We do need to know his administrators, his foreign minister, his economic ministers. So, we're not really talking about Westphalia, the Peace of Westphalia yet. If you look down there at the very bottom, it says Louis XIII in 1624 is when he takes over. So, the Peace of Westphalia has not yet happened. France is not yet on top. As a matter of fact, that's going to be something that they're going to get into during this time period, the 30 Years' War. So France isn't really on top at this point, but we know because of the Peace of Westphalia that they are going to be on top later, and we're going to attribute a lot of that to the ambitions that the ambitions of Richelieu. Let me see here. Just to clarify, Richelieu is going to thwart the ambitions of the nobles. Okay, his ambitions, however, not thwarted. His ambitions definitely are going to be to try and keep France on top. So, Duke of Sully is in our concept check. This doesn't have a slide in your notes, so please add this to your information because he did a lot to fix the French tax system. It was inefficient. It was also quite unfair. This is something that you're going to hear a lot of from here on out, that the peasants pay the taxes. Okay? The peasants pay the taxes. The nobles don't have to pay anything. People with the most money don't pay the taxes. The peasants pay the taxes. So he brings in the Duke of Sully to try and fix this. And this is Henry IV, Henry of Navarre. But, of course, Sully can't make the system more fair, so the only thing he can change is its efficiency. And he does. Look at all that great stuff that he does down there. Reduces the royal debt, builds new roads and canals, revives industry, agriculture, and encourages colonization of the New World. So, lots of great things that Sully does. We're going to have to compare him to another guy named Colbert a little bit later, so keep that in mind. Cardinal Richelieu. So we talked about him. He's the chief advisor to the Bourbons. He comes in under Louis XIII. He wants to make France strong. They actually attribute him to being a politique. So dig that phrase out of your the cobwebs there. And he gives up his religion for power. I'm not sure. To me, that doesn't sound like the real definition of politique. If you're giving something up for something else, putting the people ahead of yourselves, ahead of you, I don't really, again, I'm kind of on the fence about this, but every once in a while, and some of the folks with the AP exam say Richelieu is a politique. So he compromises his religion for power, and he helps out those Protestants because, again, he wants to take down those Habsburgs. Let me see here. He used spies to eliminate the wayward nobles, and that's going to get us into a very big, huge topic of this section, the intendant system. We're going to have, basically, the intendant system is going to be enacted, and there's going to be some nobles that kind of give a little bit of pushback. They don't like this intendant system, and that's called the Fronde. And the Fronde and the intendants get a lot of multiple choice questions, as you guys are going to see here in just a second. So the intendants are used to collect taxes, oversee provinces, because the war the wars that Henry is getting in the 30 Years' War, that is going to be very, very costly. So he uses these intendants. Now these are not nobles. As a matter of fact, he's going to take away powers that had traditionally been the nobles, and he's going to give it to these kind of like lower, or well, upper middle class, lower nobility, the minor nobles, the ones that maybe they've got a title, but it's just a title. They don't have lands, they don't have lots of money, they aren't one of the major, the powerful nobles. So he's going to give them these jobs, these intendant jobs, to collect taxes in all these different provinces all over France. And by the way, your book does a good job of talking about this in the Richelieu section, if what I'm describing doesn't really work for you. But he's going to have them take over these sections. That is going to accomplish a couple different things. They're going to be super loyal to him. Imagine going from being the ridiculed, lesser known noble to someone who's actually got real power and actually works with this man that's second in charge with the king. So he's going to have their loyalty. The loyalty of the intendants. This is also going to contribute to why they're going to make the Fronde quite unhappy. He is going to die shortly before Louis XIII, so kind of keep that in mind. Colonel Mazarin, you can say Mazarin if you want. I always say Mazarin because, again, I like to make my French feel like 4.5 years of my life meant something in French. So I like to put a little French spin on it. But he's going to be the person who's going to have to deal with the Fronde and help out Louis XIV. So the Fronde is a series of rebellions led by the nobles. It's going to at one point lead in Louis XIV fleeing Paris and basically trying to, staying out of the way. And that's going to have a lot to do with why Louis XIV turns into who he does. Now, I think there might be a bunch of space in your notes to write these down. If not, grab a sheet of paper, put it somewhere, but you definitely have to know all of this stuff, and we're going to take a second to talk about it in class. Here's some more intendant system. Again, this is where the multiple choice questions come from on the AP exam. So make sure you pause and you copy these down too, because there's probably no way I'm going to be able to leave the slides up long enough in class. So Louis XIV, l'état c'est moi. If you're my French students, you know what that means. But let's try to figure it out for just a second. C'est moi, you can probably figure that out. Moi, you probably know, that's me, okay? Or the word is me. And say is that is. So you're literally saying, he's literally saying that is me. Okay? So now, what the heck does l'état mean? Well, if you're my French students, you know des États-Unis is the United States. I'm not going to butcher the Spanish, so you can just say, the word for United States in Spanish right now. And it all has that same Latin root. So he's literally saying the state, l'état, L'Etat, l'état, the state, that is me. I am the state. I am the state is its meaning. Its literal translation is the state that is me. It means the state. Or I am the state. I am everything that rules this country. So he reigns from the age of 4. Yeah, that's quite young. So really, he's not going to be one of the ones that's in charge. That's why he fled. And he's going to refer to himself as the Sun King, or the most Christian king. If you were to look up the word divine right of kings, in a fictitious European history dictionary, his picture would be right there, because he is the epitome of, the definition of, the role model for divine right of kings. Excuse me. He's got this bishop friend, and I'm not going to slaughter that word, that man's name, who uses Old Testament examples from the Bible to say basically that that a king has been appointed by God. They were born to that parents, to that family, to be king. So only God can judge their behavior. And this is going to be this whole divine right of kings deal. So, he's going to patronize the arts. He's going to glorify France. As a matter of fact, France is going to become the center of culture at the time. And that has a lot to do with this thing called the Palace of Versailles. The Palace of Versailles is built in Baroque style. And, let me back up here for just a second. He's going to basically force the nobles to go live there. He's going to busy them with details of ceremony so that they will basically leave him alone. And then he's going to run the state. His bureaucracy are going to be members of the bourgeoisie. These are not noble class people. These are, like we said, kind of like the intendants. They're going to be high middle class folks who have some money but don't technically have that noble birth. And so those are the people he's going to rely on, going back to that intendant system. People that are loyal to him, not just, I'm a noble and my family has been noble forever, and you need to give me what I want because I'm noble. You know, he's really going to throw that out the window. And then he's going to keep them so busy, basically, with all of these little ceremonies and things that he does all, that they have to do all day, that they have no time to go and bug him about state matters. So he really is a very, very intelligent king, a very good politician, a very good busy work maker for his people. He never summoned something called an Estate General. This is our parliament type body in France, the Estates General. Okay, in England you got Parliament. In the United States you've got Congress. In France you have the Estates General. And one of the things he's going to do is revoke that Edict of Nantes. And we can see that's going to hurt the economy. So here's his big, huge picture. Remind me in class to ask you to do extra credit on a fleur-de-lis. The fleur-de-lis. I'll spell it for you and everything because it's Frenchy. But remind me that we got to do that for extra credit. Literally, because he's the Sun King, they will show you pictures of his emblem. These pictures are all over Versailles and the palace, and they could literally ask you questions about Louis XIV, never using Louis XIV's name, just giving you a picture of a sun, and you're supposed to know he's the Sun King. So, Palace of Versailles is used very strategically. This says the art of propaganda. Of course, if you can build a huge palace, that is to show that you've got money. Money, of course, means power, and you're supposed to be putting the nobility in a sense of awe or overawe. I don't like that phrasing, but hey, there we have it. Making them be so impressed by your largesse that they're scared of you, that they know you have the power, etc. And so he moves all these nobles out to Versailles, taking them out of Paris, where the government really kind of is, moves them out to the palace. So they're out there. Versailles would have anywhere from usually around 1,000 people in residence at any point in time, because the nobles are forced to live there X amount of number of months out of the year. Earlier I said that France becomes the center of culture. A lot of this has to do with the Palace of Versailles, because all the major architects, all the major artists are going to come out to Versailles, and they're going to want to get the commissions and build at Versailles. And then because all the people are there, you've got tons of scholars there. You've got tons of fashion. The center of fashion is going to move to Versailles and to Paris and to France. So again, that's kind of the reason why you got Fashion Week in Paris. And all of it has to do with this time period where Versailles is built and it becomes the center of culture. All because Louis XIV has got so many people at this palace, basically to keep him out of his affairs, but then he's got to busy them with something. So it becomes the center of culture. But that, of course, all comes at a price. Peasants, of course, are paying the taxes. He's going to tax quite heavily. Inflation is going to occur. And we're going to spend a lot of time with this chart in class looking at what happens with Louis XIV, and what happens with his economy. And, of course, a lot of that's going to come from the Palace of Versailles being built. The other is going to be from war, and the many, many wars that Henry is going to get involved in. Here is Versailles. It's you can actually do like one of those Google 360 tours of Versailles. Let's see here. These are the back gardens. They're extremely popular, and we spent an hour and a half inside the palace and an hour and a half out in the gardens, and still we were running through the gardens. Mrs. Murray and I kind of walking along, just trying to see as much as we could, but they're very popular leisure walking, strolling spot for many tourists and Parisians. There's a spot in the back where you don't have to pay anymore, and so you could really tell where the cutoff was because there were tons of people on the other side. You can kind of see it back here. There are lots and lots of people back here, and then actually it's not really full. When we were back there, this whole green was all covered because this is the free part, and then not a whole lot of people in the part that paid, because you have to pay to get into the palace, of course. Here is, again, some of that artwork. So, you're looking at the ceilings. You're looking at Baroque style. Baroque, folks, I kind of call it the art upchuck, because it is just so lavish. It is over the top. Artistic style. Instead of just stopping with one or two paintings or a column, they've got all this stuff on the top. All this crap, if I were talking about it. Just all of this just junk, all this stuff. Lots of embellishment is probably the best word, because junk, stuff, crap, it's a derogatory meaning, of course. Not if you're talking to me, because I love the word crap, but lots of flourish, lots of embellishment. All the ceilings look like this. Every room you go in is going to be a testament to Louis XIV and how awesome he is. It's going to be worked on for years and years and years, right up until like 1710, towards the end of his death. Or towards his death and the end of his reign. So lots and lots of stuff. This is called the Hall of Mirrors. It is ceiling to floor mirrors. All that gold is actual gold. It's gilded gold, meaning there's something on the bottom that shapes it, but then the whole outside is covered in a very thin gold leaf and pressed to the outside to take the shape of whatever wooden carving was underneath. Chandeliers, glass, crystal. Not glass, but crystal, excuse me. So lots and lots of money is going into this to show off his power. And I don't want to give it away quite yet, but the Hall of Mirrors, if you're one of my World War I and military history buffs, you know what happened in the Hall of Mirrors in around 1918 or 1919. I think it's 1918. So the Edict of Nantes is revoked by the one and only Sun King, Louis the 14th. And essentially it goes to his idea that there's one king, one law, and one faith. And so the Edict of Nantes had given protection to, if you said Huguenots, then nice job. He throws it out, and he's going to say there's only one church, and that is Catholicism, period. And he's really kind of Like I said, he's very good politically, keeping all those nobles busy, etc. He uses, excuse me, the Peace of Augsburg to justify his revocation, his revocation of the Edict of Nantes. Peace of Augsburg, what did it say? His region, his religion, and that's what that Latin is. Regio, region, religio, religion. His region, his religion. So he says, my region, my religion is Catholicism, everything else is gone. And he destroys Protestant churches and schools. And it's really going to cause a big division with the French people. There's also a section in here, French classicism. Take a look in your AP Achiever. They go into what classicism is here. The audio, they haven't added an audio section yet. So all of these people, not so much. Also with the theater, Racine, Molière. But it goes back to that idea that France becomes the cultural dominator of art, philosophy, architecture, fashion. They're the envy of all of Europe. So it's in your review section. Take a look at that. I actually deleted it, Molière, Racine, and all of these people in French classicism from your vocabulary terms. So they were originally there, but again, we're going to kind of focus more on the political economic rather than the stuff they may not test on. So the Wars of Louis XIV, take a moment to go to the AP Achiever stuff and make sure that you take a look at our review book on his armies, because I focus on Versailles, center of culture. AP also gets into Louis XIV and his many, many wars that he gets into. So take a look and kind of go through all of that. And just what I want you to pull away from it is, one, how expensive they are. And that centralized control. He's going to go to his deathbed basically telling Louis XV, which is his great-grandchild, by the way, Louis XV, I probably loved war too much. Okay, so, I mean, if he's flat out admitting it, then you know it probably had to be something else. So, Louis XIV and his wars, make sure you track that down in the AP Achiever. Here is Jean-Baptiste Colbert. No, I'm not talking about the guy on the TV show and the Colbert Report, but that's basically where he's getting all this crap. We're really going to get into mercantilism. That's something that I'm going to cover in class. So, as long as you focus in on its favorable balance of trade and the fact that the king runs the economy, it's a king or government, state-run economy. So that they have a favorable balance of trade, meaning they're selling more to other countries than they're buying from other countries, then you'll pretty well be good. He's brought in by Louis XIV. It's going to cause some problems. There's going to be a War of Spanish Succession that we're going to talk about briefly in class, and then please take a look at it in the review book. But Colbert is going to be one of those major topics that you need to take a look at. And it's going to be that idea, as you see down here at the bottom. When you spend more than you make it, you run into trouble. And they've got that heavy burden on the poor. Who pays the taxes? This is where you tell me. The response to that is always going to be the peasants pay the taxes when we're talking about France. So when I say who pays the taxes, it's going to be a big, loud chorus from the whole class, the peasants pay the taxes. And when you are putting that burden on the poor, it's going to cause some major, major trouble. And that's basically what AP wants you to focus on with Louis XIV. There's actually a little note, a side note, that the review book tells you to make sure that you understand that Louis XIV's economic policies are basically going to set the stage for the French Revolution. So, territorial invasions are costly, taxes fell on the poor, the religious wars are ineffective. Sure, Rome, and these are the multiple wars that are just happening all over the place. France begins to weaken militarily after Louis XIV. But again, despite the decline, it's still going to be the center for courtly life and culture and art. That is the end of section 1. Sorry it's so long, but I wanted to take a minute to just kind of shape up the lesson with you and really get to the heart of absolutism, etc. We'll be talking more about some of these things in class, so good luck with the concept. Check.